The red dust of Mars swirled against the prefab's viewport, a thin layer already accumulating despite yesterday's cleaning. Brock Callahan sighed, running a calloused hand through his salt and pepper hair as he watched the early warning signs of another dust storm. The prefab's environmental seals creaked in protest against the rising wind, another repair he'd have to tackle soon. "Daddy?" The small voice came from behind him. "Is the sky angry again?" Brock turned, forcing a smile for his 5-year-old son. Lucas stood in the doorway of their modest living area, clutching the stuffed bear that had made the journey with them from Earth. The boy's eyes, Emilia's eyes, reflected the crimson glow filtering through the viewport. "Not angry, buddy. Just restless. Like you when you can't sleep." Brock knelt, opening his arms. Lucas ran into them, the familiar weight both comfort and burden. "The atmosphere processors on this side of New Horizon are acting up again. Nothing to worry about." "Will they break like last time?" Lucas's voice was muffled against Brock's shoulder. "No," Brock promised, though he had no way of knowing. The Mars colony's infrastructure was aging faster than replacements could be manufactured. "And if they do, I'll fix them. That's what I do, remember?" Lucas nodded solemnly. "You fix everything." Almost everything, Brock thought, the familiar guilt surfacing as it always did. He couldn't fix what mattered most, couldn't bring Emilia back, couldn't give Lucas the childhood he deserved, couldn't fix his own broken career or their precarious financial situation. "How about breakfast?" Brock asked, pushing the dark thoughts away. "We've got synth eggs and maybe some real toast if the preservative held." Lucas brightened at the mention of toast, a luxury on Mars where wheat was still a fledgling experiment in the agricultural domes. The boys scampered to their tiny kitchenette, his worries momentarily forgotten. Brock followed more slowly, his knee protesting the movement. An old injury from his Earth Defense Force days, a reminder of a life that felt increasingly distant. 10 years as a chief mechanic for the EDF's orbital fleet, and what did he have to show for it? A discharge that read honorable, but felt anything but, a pension barely covering their basic needs. And a collection of skills that seemed increasingly obsolete in a civilian market that valued certifications over experience. As the prefab's ancient food processor hummed to life, Brock glanced at his comms unit. Still no response to the 15 job applications he'd sent out last week. New Horizons' economy was struggling like the rest of the Mars colonies. Too many veterans, too few opportunities. The mining operations that had once promised prosperity were now largely automated. And the administrative positions went to those with connections or credentials from Earth universities. "Daddy, it's beeping," Lucas pointed out, interrupting Brock's brooding. "Thanks, buddy." Brock rescued their breakfast from the processor, dividing the modest portions onto their chipped plates. "After breakfast, we need to get you ready for school." Lucas's face fell. "Do I have to go? Mr. Dalton said my recycled uniform looks like garbage." Brock felt a flare of anger. "Mr. Dalton said that?" The prefab school's administrator had always looked down on the families from the outer districts, especially single parents like Brock. "Well, Mr. Dalton doesn't understand that being resourceful is an important skill on Mars." "That's what I said." Lucas perked up. "I told him my daddy could fix anything, even if it looks like garbage." Brock laughed, though the sound held little humor. "Maybe don't repeat that exact wording, buddy." They ate quickly. The synth eggs tasteless but nutritious. Outside, the Martian wind picked up, scouring the prefab's exterior with fine dust. The building's support struts groaned under the assault. "Storm's coming faster than I thought," Brock muttered, checking the weather alert on his comms. "We might need to." A sharp knock on their door interrupted him. Visitors were rare in the outer districts, especially during an approaching dust storm. "Stay here," Brock told Lucas, moving cautiously toward the entrance. The prefab security system had stopped working months ago, another repair postponed due to lack of parts. The knock came again, more insistent. Brock peered through the manual viewport. A figure stood outside, wrapped in an environmental suit that was unlike any Brock had seen before. The material seemed to shimmer slightly, repelling the dust that should have clung to any surface in these conditions. The visitor's helmet was oddly shaped, with a wider-than-human visor that glowed faintly blue. Curiosity overcoming caution, Brock pressed the manual release, the door hissed open, and a swirl of red dust invaded the prefab. The figure stepped inside quickly, allowing Brock to seal the door. Up close, the environmental suit was even stranger, its contours suggesting a body structure not quite human. "Gratitude for admittance," came a voice through what must have been a translator. The words were precise but oddly cadenced. "This one requires technical assistance of urgent nature." Brock stared, realization dawning. "You're not from around here, are you?" The helmet tilted in what might have been acknowledgement. "This one's vessel experiences malfunction. Local communications indicate Brock Callahan possesses repair capabilities of significant quality." Local communications? Brock frowned. He hadn't advertised his services, couldn't afford the licensing fees the colony administration demanded. "Observation of maintenance performed at Community Atmospheric Processor." The visitor explained. "Skill level, exceptional. Payment will be rendered at standard rates." Behind Brock, Lucas peered around the corner, eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, is that an alien?" The visitor turned toward Lucas's voice, the helmet tilting again. "This one is Zarthan, yes, different origin than humans. Is this concept problematic?" "No," Brock answered quickly, giving Lucas a reassuring smile. "Not problematic at all. My son hasn't met many visitors from off-world. First contact with extraterrestrial civilizations had occurred 15 years ago. The handshake at Europa, as the history books called it. But interactions remained limited, especially in outer colony districts. Most aliens stayed in designated diplomatic zones or specialized research facilities." "What's wrong with your ship?" Brock asked, professional curiosity overcoming his surprise. "Propulsion coupling damaged in dust interaction. Atmospheric entry calculations, imprecise." The Zarthan's translator conveyed what might have been embarrassment. "This one's vessel, small, personal, not diplomatic registry." Brock understood the implication. The visitor was here unofficially, possibly even illegally. The colony administration strictly controlled alien access to Mars, citing security concerns. He should report this. Contact the authorities. Follow protocol. Instead, Brock found himself asking, "Where's your ship?" "Concealed, 1 kilometer north bearing, can direct." Brock hesitated, glancing at Lucas. School would have to wait. He couldn't leave his son alone, but bringing him along to an unauthorized alien craft. "We'll help," Lucas declared, puffing out his small chest. "Daddy can fix anything." The Zarthan's helmet turned toward Lucas again. Small human expresses significant confidence, justified. Brock smiled, ruffling Lucas's hair. "More than you know. Let me grab my toolkit." 20 minutes later, after bundling Lucas into his environmental suit and securing his own, Brock followed the Zarthan across the dusty Martian landscape. The storm was still building, but they should have a few hours before it reached dangerous levels. The alien moved with a strange, flowing gait that suggested different joint configurations beneath the suit. They reached a narrow ravine where the red cliffs provided some natural shelter from the elements. There, nestled between two rock formations, sat a craft unlike anything Brock had seen during his EDF service. The ship was small, perhaps 20 meters long, with a sleek, asymmetrical design that somehow looked both organic and precisely engineered. Its surface had the same faintly shimmering quality as the Zarthan's suit, and despite the gathering storm, no dust clung to its hull. "Propulsion coupling located at rear assembly," the Zarthan directed, indicating a panel near what Brock assumed was the engine section. Brock approached cautiously, setting down his toolkit. "I've never worked on anything like this before. I can't promise I'll be able to help." "Principles universal," the alien replied. "Physics consistent across species. This one will guide specific differences." With surprising ease, the panel slid open at the Zarthan's touch, revealing an intricate mechanism of components that were simultaneously familiar and utterly foreign. Brock recognized the general principles: energy transfer, motion conversion, thrust regulation. But the specific implementation was unlike Earth or Mars technology. Fascinating, Brock murmured, professional interest fully engaged now. He pointed to what appeared to be a fractured connection point. Is this the damaged coupling? Affirmative. Material stress exceeded tolerance during atmospheric interaction. Lucas watched wide-eyed from a safe distance, occasionally calling out questions that the Zarthan answered with surprising patience. For the next 2 hours, Brock worked under the alien's guidance, translating familiar mechanical principles to unfamiliar technology. The work was challenging but invigorating, reminding him of his early days in the EDF, when every problem was new and exciting rather than another desperate attempt to keep failing systems operational. Try power induction now, the Zarthan suggested after Brock had finished reinforcing the damaged coupling. Brock stepped back as the alien activated a control sequence. The repaired mechanism hummed to life, components shifting and realigning with fluid precision. Lights pulsed along the hull in patterns that suggested successful diagnostics. Repair assessment, exceptional. The Zarthan's translator couldn't convey emotion, but the alien's body language suggested something like relief. Functionality restored to 94% of optimal parameters, sufficient for return journey. Glad I could help, Brock said, gathering his tools. The satisfaction of solving a complex problem, especially one involving such advanced technology, left him feeling more accomplished than he had in months. Payment must be rendered, the Zarthan stated, reaching for what might have been a pocket in its environmental suit. Brock hesitated, then shook his head. No charge. Consider it. Interspecies goodwill. The alien's helmet tilted in that now familiar gesture of consideration. Unusual response. Explanation? You needed help. I could provide it. Brock shrugged. That's enough. Identity inquiry permitted? I'd prefer not, Brock replied carefully. No offense, but if you're here unofficially, the less I know about you, the better. And the less you know about me. The Zarthan was still for a moment, then inclined its helmet in what Brock interpreted as acceptance. Gratitude extends beyond transaction. This one will remember. Just be careful with the dust storms, Brock advised, gesturing toward the darkening sky. They can play havoc with even Earth tech. They parted ways at the ravine's edge, the Zarthan returning to its ship while Brock and Lucas began the trek back to their prefab. The wind was picking up now, visibility decreasing as they navigated the familiar path home. That was the coolest thing ever, Lucas exclaimed as they finally reached the relative safety of their dwelling. Wait till I tell everyone at school. About that, Brock said, helping his son out of the environmental suit. I think this should be our secret for now. The colony has rules about interacting with visitors. Lucas's face fell momentarily, then brightened with understanding. A secret mission, like when you were in the EDF? Something like that. Brock agreed, smiling at his son's enthusiasm while silently hoping the incident wouldn't come back to haunt them. Unauthorized contact with extraterrestrials could mean fines they couldn't afford, or worse, depending on the alien's status. The remainder of the day passed uneventfully. The dust storm intensified as predicted, confining them to the prefab. Brock used the time to tackle some of the building's minor repairs while Lucas worked on school assignments. By evening, the storm had begun to subside, leaving a fresh layer of red dust coating every external surface of the colony. Good night, buddy, Brock said, tucking Lucas into bed. Big day tomorrow. No more skipping school. Okay, Lucas agreed sleepily. Daddy, do you think the alien will come back? I doubt it, Brock replied honestly. They got what they needed. That's usually how it works. Lucas yawned. I liked helping you fix things. You're a good assistant, Brock said, kissing his son's forehead. The best. After Lucas fell asleep, Brock sat at their small table, reviewing household accounts that refused to balance no matter how he adjusted the numbers. The prefab's lease was increasing next quarter, Lucas's school fees were already overdue. The atmospheric processor parts he'd borrowed from the community maintenance supplies would eventually need to be replaced before someone noticed. He rubbed his tired eyes, wondering not for the first time if they should return to Earth. Life in the colonies was supposed to offer opportunities, but for many veterans like himself, Mars had become just another place where they didn't quite belong. With a sigh, Brock finally went to bed, falling into an exhausted sleep haunted by dreams of alien ships and red dust storms. Morning came with unexpected clarity. The storm had passed completely, leaving the Martian landscape scoured clean. Brock rose early, preparing Lucas's lunch while the boy still slept. A familiar knock at the door froze him mid-task. Had the Zarthan returned? With growing apprehension, Brock moved to the viewport. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 sleek black vehicles, official Earth Defense Force cruisers, sat parked outside his modest prefab. The vehicles' polished surfaces reflected the Martian sunrise, their government insignias gleaming. Between them stood 6 figures, 4 in the unmistakable uniforms of EDF security personnel, and 2 others whose attire marked them as high-ranking officials. They had found him. Whatever the Zarthan's true status, Brock's assistance had been noticed. Unauthorized contact, interfering with extraterrestrial craft. Possible security breaches, the potential charges raced through his mind, each carrying penalties he couldn't bear to contemplate. Lucas. What would happen to Lucas? The knock came again, more authoritative this time. Daddy? Lucas appeared in the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Someone's here. It's okay. Brock lied, trying to keep his voice steady. Just some people I need to talk to. Go get dressed for school, okay? Lucas nodded, too sleepy to question the tension in his father's voice. Brock took a deep breath, straightening his posture in an unconscious return to military bearing. Whatever was coming, he would face it with dignity. For Lucas's sake, he opened the door. Brock Callahan. The speaker was a tall woman with commander's insignia, 3 silver stars on an impeccable uniform. Her expression was unreadable. Yes, ma'am. The formal address came automatically, a reflex from his service days. Commander Samuel Whitaker, Earth Defense Force Diplomatic Corps. She offered a crisp salute that Brock, after a moment's hesitation, returned. May we come in? It wasn't really a question. Brock stepped aside, allowing the commander and 1 companion to enter while the security personnel remained outside. The prefab suddenly felt impossibly small. The commander's companion was not human. Tall and slender, with skin that had the same faintly iridescent quality as the Zarthan's ship. The alien wore what appeared to be formal attire rather than an environmental suit. Its features were humanoid, but distinctly foreign. Large, multifaceted eyes, a narrow mouth, and small sensory appendages where ears would be on a human. This is Ambassador Zenthril. Commander Whitaker introduced, representative of the Galactic Confederation Council to the Sol System. Brock stared, his mind racing. An ambassador? Here, in his dilapidated prefab? Pleasure to meet you, he managed, uncertain of the proper protocol. The alien inclined its head in acknowledgement. When it spoke, the voice was melodious but clearly processed through a more sophisticated translator than the Zarthan had used. The pleasure is mine. Chief Mechanic Callahan, your reputation precedes you. Brock's confusion must have shown on his face because Commander Whitaker smiled slightly. Perhaps we should sit down, she suggested. We have much to discuss. They arranged themselves around Brock's small table, the incongruity of these distinguished visitors in his humble dwelling not lost on him. From the hallway, Lucas peeked out with undisguised curiosity. Your offspring may join us, Ambassador Zenthril offered, noticing the boy. This conversation concerns his future as well. Reluctantly, Brock motioned Lucas over, settling the boy on his lap. Whatever was about to happen, he wanted his son close. Mr. Callahan, the commander began, are you aware of the identity of the individual you assisted yesterday? So this was about the Zarthan. Brock considered lying, then discarded the idea. They clearly already knew. An extraterrestrial visitor. They identified themselves as Zarthan, but requested anonymity otherwise. Their ship had a damaged propulsion coupling that I helped repair. And you requested no payment or identification verification. Ambassador Zenthral stated, it wasn't a question. That's correct. Brock tightened his arm around Lucas. Look, if I violated some regulation. The being you assisted, interrupted Commander Whitaker, was diplomatic emissary Zarthnal of the Galactic Confederation's Technological Exchange Commission. Their presence on Mars was indeed unofficial, part of an evaluation program we were not meant to be aware of. Brock blinked, processing this information. Evaluation? Of what? Ambassador Zenthral's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer slightly. Of potential candidates for the Interspecies Technical Corps. The what? A new initiative. Commander Whitaker explained. Following recent tensions between certain Earth factions and Confederation members, we've been working to establish programs that foster cooperation rather than competition. The ITC is one such program. A corps of technical specialists drawn from all member species who can serve as neutral intermediaries for technological issues. Like mechanics who make house calls for aliens, Brock summarized, trying to understand. The ambassador made a sound that might have been laughter. A simplification, but essentially correct. Technical issues often arise from cultural and physiological differences as much as mechanical ones. Solving them requires not only skill, but also adaptability, open-mindedness, and a certain ethical foundation. Which brings us to you, Mr. Callahan. Commander Whitaker continued. Emissary Zarthnel's evaluation was quite specific. You demonstrated exceptional technical aptitude with unfamiliar technology, showed no xenophobic hesitation, maintained security discretion, and, most notably, refused compensation for assisting what you believed to be an unauthorized visitor who could bring you no advantage. Brock shifted uncomfortably. I just did what seemed right. Precisely. Ambassador Zenthral said. The Confederation values ethical consistency above technical certification. Many candidates with superior formal qualifications have failed this evaluation by demanding payment, reporting the unauthorized alien, or attempting to copy protected technology. Wait. Brock's mind raced to catch up. Are you saying this was some kind of test? Not initially. Commander Whitaker clarified. Emissary Zarthnal's ship was genuinely damaged. Their decision to seek your help rather than official channels was spontaneous, based on their observation of your work at the Community Atmospheric Processor. Your response, however, triggered their interest in your potential candidacy. Lucas, who had been listening with remarkable patience, finally spoke up. Candidacy for what? Ambassador Zenthral turned those unsettling eyes toward the boy. For your father to become one of the first human members of the Interspecies Technical Corps, a position of considerable prestige and responsibility within the Galactic Confederation. A job? Lucas looked up at Brock, excitement dawning. Daddy, they're offering you a job. Brock felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Hope, suspicion, anxiety. What exactly would this position entail? 6 months of specialized training at the orbital facility near Jupiter's L4 point. Commander Whitaker explained. Followed by a 3-year commitment to the ITC, with deployments throughout Confederation space as needed. Compensation includes full relocation benefits, education provisions for dependents, medical coverage exceeding EDF veteran standards, and a salary approximately triple the Mars colony's administrative scale. The figures she quoted left Brock momentarily speechless. It was more than he'd earned even at the height of his EDF career. And my son? He finally asked, the paramount concern. Family accommodations are provided at the Jupiter facility during training, Ambassador Zenthral assured him. For subsequent deployments, you may choose between family accompaniment or maintaining a permanent residence at any Earth or Confederation Core world facility, with regular return transportation provided. It sounded too good to be true. Brock had learned to be wary of such offers. Why me? He asked bluntly. I'm a discharged EDF mechanic with outdated certifications and no diplomatic experience. Surely there are better qualified candidates. Formal qualifications are teachable. Ambassador Zenthral replied. Character is not. Of 37 evaluation encounters conducted throughout Earth territories, only 3 candidates displayed the combination of technical skill and ethical framework the position requires. You are one of those 3. The ITC needs people who solve problems because they're problems, not because of who's having them. Commander Whitaker added, Your service record shows that tendency, and yesterday's interaction confirmed it. Brock fell silent, mind reeling with possibilities. A real future for himself and Lucas. Work that mattered. Financial security. But also risks, unknown challenges, leaving the only home Lucas had really known. I need time to consider this, he said finally. Understandable. Ambassador Zenthral acknowledged. However, time constraints exist. Training begins in 14 Earth days. A decision within 48 hours is necessary for processing. 2 days, Brock translated. 2 days. Commander Whitaker confirmed, rising from the table. We've transferred preliminary information to your comms unit. Review it, ask any questions, and contact us with your decision. She handed him a communication card with direct connection codes, the kind of priority access Brock hadn't held since his active duty days. One more thing, the ambassador added, also standing. This opportunity is classified until the program's official announcement. Discretion is required. After they departed, their black cruisers leaving tracks in the Martian dust. Brock sat motionless at the table, the commander's information card heavy in his hand. Daddy? Lucas tugged at his sleeve. Are we going to space? I don't know, buddy. Brock answered honestly. It's a big decision. But you'd be fixing spaceships again, Lucas pointed out with a child's simple logic. That's what you love. Was it that simple? Brock wondered. Follow what you love, what you're good at, and trust that the rest will fall into place. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Brock kept Lucas home from school. They both needed time to process the morning's events. While Lucas played with his limited toys, Brock reviewed the information transferred to his comms unit, employment terms, training schedules, facility specifications. The more he read, the more legitimate the offer appeared. By evening, he found himself at their viewport again, staring out at the Martian landscape. The prefab's environmental seal creaked in the night wind, another repair he might not need to make if they left. But could he really uproot Lucas again? Move them into an entirely unknown situation? Put his trust in institutions that had already discharged him once when budgets tightened? Voices from the neighboring prefabs drifted through the thin walls. Ms. Janarara arguing with her supplier about price increases. Rix from 2 units down singing his mournful Titan mining songs. This was their community, such as it was. Imperfect, but familiar. Having second thoughts, Brock turned to find Lucas watching him, the boy's expression far too serious for his age. Just thinking about everything we'd be leaving behind, Brock admitted. Lucas looked around their modest dwelling, then back at his father. But we'd be together, right? Always, Brock promised. Then everything important comes with us. Brock smiled, his son's simple wisdom cutting through his adult complications. When did you get so smart? I had a good teacher, Lucas replied, mimicking a phrase Brock often used. That night, after tucking Lucas in, Brock sat at their small table again. But instead of reviewing household accounts, he found himself writing lists. Pros and cons, questions and concerns, hopes and fears. By morning, his decision was made. The call to Commander Whitaker was brief and to the point. Yes, he would accept the position. Yes, he understood the commitment involved. Yes, he and Lucas would be ready for transport to the Jupiter facility within 2 weeks. You've made the right choice, Chief Mechanic Callahan, the commander assured him. For yourself and for Earth Confederation relations. I hope so, Brock replied, watching Lucas pack his few possessions with excited determination. For both our sakes. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. There were forms to complete, medical evaluations to undergo, belongings to sort. Through it all, Brock kept expecting some obstacle to arise, some bureaucratic roadblock or forgotten disqualification that would shatter this unexpected opportunity. But the obstacles never materialized. Instead, doors that had long been closed to him suddenly opened. Colony administrators who had previously ignored his job applications now expedited his departure paperwork. The school that had hassled him about late payments now provided Lucas's academic records with effusive cooperation. Mr. Dalton, who had mocked Lucas's recycled uniform, personally delivered the boy's school completion certificate, his manner suddenly deferential. "We always knew Lucas had potential," the administrator claimed, avoiding Brock's skeptical gaze. "He gets that from you. Of course, your new position is quite prestigious." "Is it?" Brock replied neutrally. "I'm just a mechanic who's good with his hands." "And a chief specialist for the Interspecies Technical Corps," Mr. Dalton added, the title rolling off his tongue with obvious envy. "The first from our colony selected for the program. It reflects well on our educational system." "Does it?" Brock couldn't resist the small satisfaction of watching the man squirm. "Strange, since you didn't seem to think much of either of us 2 weeks ago." Mr. Dalton departed shortly thereafter, his congratulations sounding hollow even to his own ears. On their final evening on Mars, Brock and Lucas stood outside their now empty prefab, watching the sunset paint the landscape in deepening shades of red. Tomorrow, a transport would take them to the orbital station, where they would connect with the Jupiter shuttle. Their few remaining possessions were packed in 2 small bags, everything else either sold or donated to neighbors. "Will we ever come back?" Lucas asked, his small hand warm in Brock's larger one. "Maybe someday," Brock answered, "for a visit, but I think we're headed somewhere better. With real birds and trees, like in my books." "Eventually?" Brock smiled. "The Jupiter facility is mostly indoors, but after my training, we'll have options. Earth, maybe, or one of the Confederation worlds, if they allow human residence." Lucas nodded, satisfied with the promise of future wonders. As darkness fell, bringing out the stars that would soon be their destination, Brock reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them here. One small act of kindness, one decision to help without expectation of reward, had changed everything. Perhaps there was a lesson in that, one he hoped Lucas would carry forward. 6 months later, the Jupiter L4 orbital facility hummed with activity. Through the reinforced viewports of the residential section, the massive gas giant loomed, its swirling storms and bands of color forming a breathtaking backdrop to daily life. Brock stood at attention before a mixed panel of human and extraterrestrial evaluators, his newly issued ITC uniform still feeling slightly foreign on his frame. The training had been intense, part technical education, part cultural immersion, part diplomatic protocol, pushing him beyond limits he hadn't known he possessed. "Chief Specialist Callahan," announced the panel head, a stern Rigelian whose species communicated as much through skin coloration as through words. "Your final evaluation scores have been tabulated." Brock maintained his composure, though anxiety knotted his stomach. 6 months of grueling work, of being stretched intellectually and physically, of balancing training demands with parental responsibilities, all culminating in this moment. "You have achieved a performance rating of 94.3%, the Rigelian continued, her skin flushing a deep blue that Brock had learned indicated approval. "Placing you second in your cohort and first among human candidates." Relief washed through him, quickly followed by pride. "Furthermore, your leadership assessment indicates particular aptitude for cross-species team coordination. You are hereby assigned as Technical Response Team Leader, Alpha Division, with deployment authority throughout the Sol system and adjacent Confederation territories." It was more responsibility than Brock had anticipated for a first assignment, and higher status than he'd held even at his EDF peak. "Thank you," he responded, the formal acknowledgement he'd been taught. "I accept the assignment and will uphold the Corps' standards in all technical and diplomatic matters." The ceremony that followed was brief but meaningful. The presentation of his official credentials, the recording of his oath, the formal recognition of his new status within both Earth and Confederation hierarchies. Afterward, as the assembly dispersed, Commander Whitaker approached him with a rare smile. "Congratulations, Chief Specialist. You've exceeded expectations." "Thank you, Commander. Though I'm still not entirely sure why I was selected in the first place." "Still questioning your good fortune?" She shook her head. "Perhaps now you'll believe what I've been telling you. Your technical skills were never the question. It was your character that set you apart. The Confederation values problem solvers who do the right thing regardless of recognition or reward." "I'm beginning to understand that," Brock acknowledged. "And how is Lucas adjusting?" the commander inquired. Brock's expression softened at the mention of his son. "Better than I am, honestly. He's thriving in the education center, making friends with children from a dozen worlds. Last week, he corrected his xenobiology instructor on Centaurian respiratory systems. Apparently, he's been spending his free time in the xenophysiology database." Following in his father's footsteps, Commander Whitaker observed, "Curious about how things work?" "And determined to fix what doesn't," Brock added with paternal pride. Later that evening, Brock returned to the family quarters they'd called home for half a year. The apartment was modest but comfortable, far more spacious than their Mars prefab, with amenities they'd once considered luxuries. Fresh produce in the food storage unit, reliable environmental controls, hot water on demand. Lucas was waiting, his face alight with excitement. "Did you pass? Are you officially an ITC now?" "I passed," Brock confirmed, swinging his son up into a hug. "Team leader, even—" "I knew it," Lucas exclaimed. "Ms. Talara said you were the best in the simulator tests. She has a cousin who works in the assessment division." Brock laughed. "You and your information network. Maybe you should be in intelligence instead of school." "Nope." Lucas shook his head firmly. "I'm going to be a xenobiological engineer. Fix people, not just machines." "A worthy goal." Brock agreed, setting his son down. "Hungry? I thought we might celebrate at the central dining hall tonight." Lucas nodded eagerly. The dining hall, with its diverse cuisine options from across known space, remained a source of wonder for both of them. As they walked the curved corridors of the station, passing humans and non-humans alike, Brock reflected on how quickly the extraordinary had become ordinary. 6 months ago, the sight of a Danebian's crystalline exoskeleton or a Tau Ceti diplomat's hovering translation sphere would have stopped him in his tracks. Now, such encounters were simply part of daily life. "Dad?" Lucas tugged at his hand, interrupting his thoughts. "Are we staying here now that your training's done?" "For a little while," Brock explained. "My first assignment keeps us in the Sol system, but eventually, we'll need to decide on a more permanent arrangement." "I vote for Earth," Lucas declared. "I want to see a real ocean and climb a real tree." "Earth is definitely an option," Brock agreed. "Though there are some Confederation worlds that might interest you too, places where the trees communicate with each other, or oceans that glow at night." Lucas's eyes widened at the possibilities. "We get to choose." "We get to choose," Brock confirmed. Together, they reached the dining hall, its vast space filled with the sounds of a dozen different languages and translation devices. View screens along one wall displayed real-time images from various Confederation worlds, azure skies of Proxima Centauri b, the ringed majesty of a gas giant in the Tau Ceti system, Earth's familiar blue marble. As they collected their meals, Earth standard for Lucas, a more adventurous Rigelian dish for Brock, a familiar figure approached their table. Chief Specialist Callahan, Ambassador Zenthral greeted them, those multifaceted eyes now a familiar sight. "And young Lucas, may I join you?" "Of course, Ambassador," Brock responded, gesturing to an empty chair. "I've just received word of your new assignment," the ambassador said, settling into the specially designed seat. "Team Alpha has been requested for a rather delicate matter at the Mars colony." Brock raised an eyebrow. "Mars? That's coincidental. Perhaps, Zenthral acknowledged. Though the Confederation seldom believes in coincidence, your familiarity with the colony systems will be invaluable. What's the issue? Brock asked. Professional interest engaged. The atmospheric processors, the ambassador replied. The very ones you once maintained. They're failing at an accelerated rate, creating tensions between Earth administration and local governance. Technical solution needed, yes, but diplomatic sensitivity required. Brock nodded slowly, understanding the subtext. This wasn't just about fixing machines, it was about mending relationships, addressing systemic problems that affected people's lives. When do we depart? 3 Earth days, Zenthral replied. Your team is being assembled now, 2 humans, a Rigelian mechanical specialist, and a Danebian environmental systems expert. We're going back to Mars, Lucas asked, excitement clear in his voice. Briefly, Brock told him, to help fix those processors that were always breaking down. The ones Mr. Dalton said weren't worth repairing because outer district residents weren't priority citizens, Lucas recalled with a child's uncomfortable precision. Ambassador Zenthral's eyes shifted color slightly. An interesting perspective. Perhaps Administrative Director Dalton would benefit from understanding the Confederation's view on equitable resource distribution. Perhaps he would, Brock agreed, suppressing a smile at the thought. As they finished their meal, discussing the details of the upcoming mission, Brock felt a deep sense of satisfaction settle over him. 1 year ago, he had been an unemployed veteran struggling to provide for his son, fixing failing equipment for neighbors who could barely afford to thank him. Now he led an interspecies technical team, solving problems that affected thousands of lives, with a future of possibilities stretching before him and Lucas. All because he had helped someone who needed it, without asking who they were or what they could do for him in return. 1 year later, Brock stood before the Galactic Confederation Council. The massive chamber hushed as he concluded his address. Behind him, holographic displays showed the successful results of the Interspecies Technical Corps' first dozen major operations, atmospheric systems restored on Mars, navigation hazards cleared in the Tau Ceti shipping lanes, communication networks rebuilt following solar disruptions in the Proxima system. The success of the ITC model isn't in our technical capabilities, though those are considerable. Brock stated, his voice steady despite the august audience. It's in our approach. We don't just fix machines, we build connections. We don't just solve technical problems, we bridge cultural divides. From his seat in the observation gallery, Lucas watched with undisguised pride. Now 6 years old and comfortable in surroundings that would have seemed impossible on Mars. When I repaired a damaged propulsion coupling for a visitor to my world, I didn't know I was helping a diplomatic emissary. I didn't know it would lead to all of this. Brock gestured to the chamber around him. I just saw a problem I could solve. A being who needed help. The council members, representatives from 37 worlds across 12 star systems, listened with varying expressions of approval. At the center, Ambassador Zenthral, now elevated to senior facilitator, inclined their head in acknowledgement. As we expand the ITC program to include more worlds and species, I encourage the Council to remember that principle. Technical expertise can be taught, cultural protocols can be learned, but the willingness to help others, regardless of differences or potential reward, that's the foundation everything else must build upon. Brock stepped back from the podium, the formal conclusion to his testimony. The council chamber filled with the sounds of approval, human applause mixing with Rigelian tonal humming and the crystalline resonance of Danebian appreciation. Senior facilitator Zenthral rose, their iridescent skin catching the chamber's light. The council thanks Chief Director Callahan for his insight and service. The Interspecies Technical Corps expansion proposal is approved as submitted. Implementation will commence within 1 standard cycle. The formalities continued, but Brock's role was complete. He made his way to the observation gallery, where Lucas waited with Commander Whitaker, now Admiral Whitaker, her own career elevated by the program's success. You did great, Dad, Lucas exclaimed, his vocabulary expanding though his enthusiasm remained purely childlike. Did they really approve all 20 new training centers? They did, Brock confirmed, ruffling his son's hair, a gesture that remained unchanged despite their changing circumstances, including the Earth facility. Admiral Whitaker smiled. Which means you'll finally be able to show Lucas those real trees and oceans he's been wanting to see. About time, Lucas declared. I've read every book in the station database about Earth ecosystems. Well then, you'll have to be my guide, Brock teased. I've been too busy fixing things to do much reading. As they left the council chamber, walking through the grand corridors of the Jovian diplomatic station, Brock reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a struggling veteran in a crumbling prefab to the director of a Confederation-wide program. From a father worried about providing basic necessities to one planning which Earth wonders to show his son first. All because he had fixed a strange alien ship without asking questions or demanding payment. They reached the transport hub, where their shuttle waited to return them to the main Jupiter facility. Through the massive viewports, the gas giant's swirling storms created patterns of breathtaking beauty, chaos and order intertwined in perfect balance. Ready to go home? Brock asked Lucas, gesturing toward their waiting shuttle. Lucas looked up at him, Amelia's eyes bright with intelligence and curiosity. We're always home, the boy said with simple wisdom. As long as we're together. Brock smiled, feeling the truth of those words deep in his soul. Home wasn't Mars or Jupiter or the Earth they would soon visit. Home was where they helped each other, fixed what was broken, and faced each new challenge side by side. As their shuttle departed, carrying them back toward their quarters, Brock caught a final glimpse of the council chamber through a distant viewport. Inside, representatives of worlds that had once been strangers, even enemies, now worked together, building connections that transcended differences. Perhaps that was the most important thing he had learned to fix after all.